Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith back once again, this time with the continuing Raja Jackson fallout, this time on the legal side. And whenever I need legal advice, you know where I don't go? I don't go to the YouTube comments. I go to Patrick Donahue, good friend of mine, also Carlson Gracie Brown Belt here in South Florida. Defender Donahue Law is where you can find him. Defender Donahue, am I wrong?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it. Thanks, Jimmy.
Awesome. Anyway, so I know you're following this case. You called me like as I was posting my video about this. You're always on top of, combat related stuff. Before we get into any of the legal ins and outs, man, as a human being watching this video, what were your first thoughts, first reactions?
And I'm glad you asked me this because otherwise people would think I'm a monster.
Right.
Something I think about is when we do jiu-jitsu, when I tap somebody, my first thought is, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And Jimmy, as brutal as a training partner and coach as you are, the first thing you say when you tap anybody is, "Hey, you okay?" And it's human nature to make sure if you hurt somebody to not further damage, right?
Yeah.
And watching this video, watching how he could, I don't understand how anybody could hit somebody unconscious. I can't even choke somebody without feeling like I don't have that dog in me, like I just don't have that. And it's just, that's somebody who can't function in society. That's somebody who needs to be held accountable. And he either needs years of psychiatric help or he needs to go away to prison because that's somebody who can't be trusted in society. If their reaction to a knocked out person is to keep hitting them, that's dangerous. It's only a matter of time before he, God forbid, but hopefully this guy survives.
What people have trouble understanding was a little bit in the comments. By the way, the people in my comments generally extremely critical of Roger Jackson. I didn't get a lot of people defending him, one or two, not a whole lot. It's almost universal condemnation. But this idea, which I tried to explain in the video, that why didn't the ref do anything? He's not a real referee. It's like asking people on stage during Julius Caesar if he really started getting stabbed. Why didn't they do anything? He's kind of like going, this went off script. I'm an actor pretending to be a referee. I'm not a real referee. So the delay and why didn't more people react? The video I saw, by the way, when people said, oh, he hit him like 20 times, the video I originally saw was a cell phone video. And it went from the ring to a stunned wrestler back to the ring. So I missed a bunch of the punches. I said that in the video, and people still went like, hey, well, more punches than you said. I said I saw 13 plus, which may be 18. The total was something like 21 to 25, depending on what you count. But that shock in the wrestler's face, these aren't fighters, folks. They were like watching a play and it went off the rails, and it took them longer to process than someone who's in the fight world who sees this every time. When someone holds on to a submission too long in a jiu-jitsu tournament, coaches jump on there in about 2 seconds because we're used to this. This happens sometimes and we're all ready for it. These people in pro wrestling generally aren't, and that's why there was the delay. So I want to explain that. All right, enough of the pleasantries. The legal side of this, the biggest question that was kind of posed by my followers in the comment section was attempted murder, assault, and battery. What's the legal difference? I know you're a Florida lawyer, but you did research California law. What's the line here between attempted murder and assault and battery?
The way to think of this is, and again, thank you for the legalese. Yes, I cannot give legal advice in the state of California, but I'm entertained by this, and I wanted to see what the status was. So the way to think of this is the difference between battery and attempted murder is really just a battery that goes too far. An affirmative step after the harmful or offensive touch, that gets you into a category of, okay, you're actually trying to kill the person. You have the mens rea, the mental state that you want to end this person's life, or you should know what you're doing could end their life.
So when he said, which apparently he did online, I'm gonna punch this guy till they pull him off of me. As soon as you say that, are you verging into attempted murder? Because someone might not be able to pull you off before you do lethal damage. You say, I'm going to hit this guy till someone stops me. Someone might not be able to stop you until they're dead. Did he really hurt himself with that statement?
I don't think so. And
Please tell me why.
a good lawyer will be able to fight this case if any type of case is filed, because you have to remember, in a vacuum, if you say a statement like, I'm going to beat the guy until I kill him, that looks bad. But if you say that as a pro wrestler, where is the line here? What is real and what's fake? I know this sounds crazy, but I was thinking about this. This is as if like a magician actually sawed his person in half, right? Because it's like everybody expects this to be fake. If you ask people on the street, is wrestling real or fake? The first thing they're gonna say is, yeah, it's fake. So it's like where we're all assuming this is just a clear-cut case of somebody lost their mind and beat up a wrestler, but why was he there in the first place? Why did they let him in with no security? Obviously, there's a to go back, there's an issue here
Yes.
with consent, and
Yes.
that's the sticking point and that's the defense. No matter what he said, the answer is if this is consistent with his defense is they gave me the green light to do this, the promotion. I was there filming. They knew that I was filming with my camera crew. The camera angles are perfect. I spoke with the management. They said, make it real. Let me back up because I watched a lot of the videos
Right.
here of good and bad evidence. So let me tell you what I see if that's okay.
Please. You're the attorney.
So so he gets there and we see this video. It's live stream on Kick. And I guess this guy, the other wrestler that he eventually beat unconscious, hits him over the head with like a beer bottle or something.
A can, yeah.
And then there's a conversation on the stream, and it's like, "Hey, buddy, like I thought we were gonna like sell this," and like they break character. He's like, he apologizes like three or four times, like, "Hey, I didn't mean to hit you. I was trying to sell this."
Yeah.
The
The
wrestling term.
work, yes,
Right.
as we call it.
And he's like, I play along, right? And Jackson basically says, okay, all right, I get it. He breaks character on camera, right? So it's like, okay, so there must be some conversation that this is going to be a fight on stream, right? This is like, that's why they brought him in. Why else would they have him there? And then there's a conversation with, there's a lapse in time, right? So there's no self-defense here. If somebody hits you over the head, you can't hit him 2 hours later and say self-defense.
Right.
If he did this immediately after he get hits in the head, maybe there's a self-defense claim. So that's gone. There's a
Okay,
cooling off
gotcha. Which is another important part. Hey, he hit him. Yeah.
period. Right.
Yeah. The lapse in
Separate
time makes
crimes.
self-defense.
You could say you could maybe even make the argument he was battered. Jackson was battered, and then Jackson did another battery. Or attempted murder, however you look at it. So the evidence that's strange, super weird, is Jackson's on the stream and he's talking to somebody on the phone and he's saying they told me that I could hit him for real. And he's telling his stream 50 subs and I'll knock him out. 50 subs. That's how many subs I need to knock him out. Which is like, is that a show? Is that real? Where are we now? And then he gets a phone call, and I don't know if it's his dad or who's on the call, and he says they said I could hit him for real. So who's they, and what is this, and what's going on? And another wrestler says to him on the stream, "You can get your receipt." And I had to look this up. Do you know what that means as a wrestling term?
Payback.
Right. And
Receipt is you went stiff on me, I'm gonna go stiff on you. You hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. That's in the wrestling business. That's called a receipt.
So I guess that means that he's saying he gave him almost like a green light, right? In the jiu-jitsu gym, we call it like a green light, right?
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
coach says that guy's, unacceptable, his behavior, go at him hard. So isn't that like I guess that's a wrestling term for green light. Like you can not fake it, right? Or it could be misconstrued to not fake it.
Right. What
And
what I'm
then
curious about too, because we spoke about this I think last night when I was walking my dog. Uh, in California, they have a very specific law about that, and also the idea of consent from the promotion doesn't mean consent from the victim, and you need consent from the victim. And once again, California has a very specific law about that. Can you explain that before we go any
sure.
further?
So
Yeah.
basically, you can't consent to great bodily injury. It's in the way that you think about this is like, of course, you can't consent to great bodily injury because then assisted suicide would be legal everywhere. So it's like you can consent to, lack of a better term, rough stuff, but there's a line where it's like you can't consent to being knocked unconscious to the point of death. You can't consent to murder. It's still a crime. And in this case, I know we're harping on consent, but if I'm the
But these
defense,
are the details of the case that someone's going to bring up in court.
right,
That's why I'm bringing you on. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's like if his brother, the poor wrestler who got knocked unconscious, he released a statement. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was basically like, and I was laughing. I was like, they must have talked to a lawyer already because the statement's like, the promotion shouldn't have allowed this to happen. Why would you release that statement if you're not getting ready to sue the promotion for negligence for the injuries? So now, no matter what that poor wrestler says who is knocked out, if he takes the stand, the first question is, it's not whether he consented or not, it's is he biased? And I know that sounds terrible, but they're probably going to sue for their medical bills, which would be $500,000 against the promotion. So now the first question out of your mouth as a defense attorney is, you have a financial gain if this goes against Mr. Jackson, the promotion. Isn't that true? And now anything he says, whether he consented or not consented, is out the window because he's no longer liable because it's no longer about him being a victim. It's about him being a victim and possibly gaining financial money from this, which is terrible. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like if that's the strategy, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter if he says, yes, I consented. This was going to be a fight that went too far, or no, I consented to none of this. If there's some type of civil case and they're able to get that in, his credibility's gone, even though he's the victim here. I know that's terrible, but it's the way a court works.
What I'm curious about is, and I said it on the original video reacting to this, as a mixed martial artist, this guy's not a civilian. He knew what a mounted punch does to a human being. He knows what a person looks like when they're unconscious. He knows what a person looks like when they've been severely damaged. He knows all of these things like a civilian could go, it was wrestling work. I didn't know. I threw a punch and I just did this. And hey, you're not trained like we're trained. You
Right.
should have known the damage you were doing, meaning even because probably the wrestler's probably not going to remember it. And if he does remember it, as you know, his memory could be called into question in court, right? Like, how do you know what you said 5 minutes before you got brain damage? The idea that well, I thought it was work. I thought it was this. You were a trained mixed martial artist, and you knew what you were doing could cause permanent damage, if not death. How do you get around that if you're a defense attorney for
Well,
Jackson?
it's funny you bring this up because when I watched the video, I was horrified. I was like, he's knocking out somebody's knocked out and he's hitting him.
The slam knocked him out. He
Right.
was out when he hit the ground. Yeah.
One of the worst things I've ever seen on the internet. And it's like, I saw people in the comments, people I respected, people in the MMA industry that were like, oh, this is fake. You can tell he's turning his head while he's getting knocked out. And I was just like, first I was like appalled. I was like, how could you think this is fake? And then I was like, wait a minute. If people who understand combat sports might think this is fake, then what is the average person going to look at this video? Maybe you can convince them, hey, listen, he was turning his head. This was a work. I know that sounds insane, but there is a lot of people on the internet. I was shocked. I think he was clearly knocked out, but I don't think this is as cut and dry in the general public. Again, and we're taking this in a vacuum. Pro wrestling. We're in pro wrestling. We're assuming it's fake. We want to believe it's fake. So it's should he know that he was killing somebody? Yeah, absolutely. But isn't it also possible that they told him, hey, beat this guy up? He consented to be knocked out. I know that's insane, but backyard wrestlers huff glass, okay? So it's not out of
This
the
was an
realm of
indie show,
possibility
right?
that this person could
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not out of the realm of possibility that he consented to something like this, and then they told him, listen, we'll pull you off when it's enough. And then all of a sudden, nobody knows what's happening, and it's going too far. And it's possible, right? Like, do I believe it? No. But is it a viable defense, especially the way that they're talking about this? Yes. And I think that the spotlight can be changed to that. And again, it's not my personal opinion. It's just what a defense attorney might do given the narrative of this case.
It's funny. I'm going to tell a behind the scenes Fight Quest story, which I'm sure everybody's going to either not know what the hell I'm talking about or they're going to love it if they're a fan of the show. When I was training in the Philippines and I had a stick fight with this Filipino Marine and I beat him in the stick fight and he was furious. And he wanted to do a bare knuckle fight with me. And I towered over this guy and the guy couldn't box. I knew both of those things. I was bigger, I was stronger, I was faster, and the guy can't box. And the producer, when he wants to bare knuckle fight with you, and I go, that will look terrible because I'll murder him on camera and it's gonna look awful. I just told him, I go, I'm gonna murder him, and I'm so much bigger than the guy.
Right.
I'm gonna look like,
Yeah.
not only can I really hurt him, it's gonna look terrible on TV. I don't know what to tell you. And I talked him into like kind of a pancrase open hand thing. So I'm like, if I hit this guy with a closed fist, I'm gonna kill him. And and they did, and it worked, and it looked great. And it's a similar kind of thing where once again the idea that if someone's trained, hey, hit this guy until we if WWE had come to me and said, hey, we're gonna do an angle where you know you're gonna hit Seth Rollins with a closed fist until somebody pulls you off him, I go, that's absurd. I will break his face even if you guys get to me in 2 seconds. Like he doesn't, there is no like you and I, like, and also if you know professionals do all kinds of things to mitigate the damage of a punch. We roll, we slip, we do even like if you barely see it. Oh, that guy took a
Or
clean
even
punch.
tensing up, right?
Well,
Like you're
all
not as
kinds of
tense.
things, all kinds of things we do to protect ourselves that even you as an audience, if you're untrained, won't see. And I'll go, he rolled that a little bit. This was boom, boom, boom. Anyone with two brain cells would have said, no, I'm not going to hit him till you pull me off. I'm going to hit him
Right.
twice and that'll break his face. Like that's not acceptable at all. But you said a competent defense attorney might get around that argument that
And
he
don't
should have
forget,
known.
none of us knew
Yeah.
of any of these people 72 hours ago. So, like, as awful as it sounds, mission accomplished. Now everybody knows the promotion. Now everybody knows the wrestler. Now everybody knows Rampage Jackson's son's name, Raja. Like, nobody knew that, right? So it's like, if you can survive the awful publicity, and I'm not saying that they did this, but it might be fake. And what if they said to him, do this until we stop? He's an impressionable young kid. He's not like he has one MMA fight, like he's been training. I'm sure he's Rampage Jackson's son. I'm sure the kid can fight for real, but this isn't somebody who has the ability, it seems like, to be like, this doesn't seem like a good idea. I mean, he's streaming on Kick for attention and fighting with the chat. Like, that's the perfect mark if you wanted to take advantage of somebody and blow up your promotion, but it went too far.
Who's going to be gone after and how? So the first question I have is, are we looking at attempted murder as opposed to assault and battery? If and first off, the people who in the comment section, which I understand, why wasn't he arrested right away? Guys, unless there's a cop standing right there who recognizes what's going on. You had a great quote, by the way, when I was walking my dog. You said, if somebody came up to a cop and said, a guy just got beat up in a wrestling ring and he's unconscious, the cop's going to go, yeah, sure, buddy. I bet that's what they
Yeah,
do.
I bet.
It all has to kind of come out for LAPD to go, oh, this was a real
Right.
assault, which he will probably be arrested in the next couple of days. But what is likely charge wise? Attempted murder or assault and battery? If you were a prosecutor and what you know about prosecutors.
And just to follow I'm going to answer your question,
Please.
but to piggyback, my favorite piece of evidence is after this happened, what was everybody's reaction? Besides pulling off Jackson, the show went on. They pinned a guy that was unconscious, theoretically dying in the ring. Isn't that another piece of evidence that shows maybe this was planned? Maybe people knew. Because if it was as horrific as we're saying, wouldn't the first thing they do is turn on the lights and say, hey, everybody go home. We need to stop this. This went too far. No, they didn't do that. They pinned the guy that was probably had brain damage. So again, what does that mean? And is that it muddies the waters. It makes this say what's real and what's not real. And now to answer your question,
Yes.
what is he probably going to be charged with? I am surprised he hasn't been arrested yet. California doesn't require. Sorry, I got a bad connection. Can you still see me?
I see you. Yeah. You're
Oh,
fine.
you're perfect. California, as far as I understand, does not require victim consent to arrest somebody. So it's not
Right.
like a
It doesn't.
press charge state where they're like, he has to cooperate. I think that the likelihood is they don't know what's real and what's not. They have somebody being battered beyond consciousness, but where was the line? Where is this? This is a messy case. I personally, as somebody who's trained, think that if you hit somebody who's knocked out, that's an affirmative step to murder them. Period. I think that that is attempted murder, but I don't know what the police and the charge, I don't know. I don't know. I think, and then again, if it's not attempted murder, it's just a battery or a great bodily injury. When did it cross the line between a battery and great bodily injury? Like, what if there was consent? Because if there's consent, there's no battery unless it gets to the point of great bodily injury. So if the guy really did break his face and his teeth got knocked out, then there's something there. But bizarre.
Is the strategy, generally speaking, to go higher or lower? Meaning, we're going for attempted murder. If the guy cops a plea to assault and battery, do you generally go all the way? Do you charge with the most grievous thing you can, and then if there's a deal later, because you can always bring it down? What's the general prosecution strategy here?
Yeah, I would say it is to charge as high as possible and then bring it down, but that backfires. I mean, just to bring up Casey
Please.
Anthony, they went after her, and again, this has been a while, so this is she actually drinks at bars in West Palm Beach, so just FYI, if you might run into her. So, um,
Yeah, as often as I drink in bars at West Palm Beach. You
well,
know me. You know me,
I know you
Pat. I
love
don't leave
those
my house
Irish
if I don't
shepherd's
absolutely have
pie.
to. Go ahead.
The point is, though, is they went after her for basically premeditated murder when they knew that they didn't have the evidence for that. And there's a lot of people that walk because they're so gung-ho against getting the highest thing that they don't realize, hey, we're going to let this person walk because we're going for the moon for the charging. Kind of like with Kane, right? They went after Kane really high and then eventually dropped it down.
Yeah.
So I think that they will probably, if they arrest him, it will probably be attempted murder. But if he doesn't get arrested, I think it shows again what's real and what's not real, what's consent, because they're gonna do an investigation here, right? And if they and another thing, the promoter apparently, I was watching a podcast, told the wrestlers that there was a pink-haired wrestler that saved the day in this case. I don't know if you noticed in the video, he
Yeah.
looked like the only one that could actually fight. He like gets the guy, but even he goes for a wrestling move. He like goes for a double leg to stop it. And they texted him and said something along the lines of, if you hear from a lawyer or the police, don't talk to them, send them to the promotion. So everybody, the wheels are moving wherever.
Wagons are circling. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. The promotion's worried that they're going to get sued civilly. If the Jacksons were smart, they'd stop streaming and get some good attorneys ready just in case they go after him civilly or criminally. I mean, it didn't look good that after the fight, he immediately streaming saying, "I hate wrestlers. I always wanted to knock out wrestlers." Like that's not good. But again, is it in character? Is it, I don't know. It could be. Probably not.
What's so interesting about what you're telling me is the statements before and after, the intent part of attempted murder is going to be tough because wrestlers say all the time they're going to kill each other. That's part of a
Right.
work, right? And fighters will say, "I'm going to kill this guy in the ring." They don't, it's that
Mean it.
that the before and after that. If this were a phone call between civilians who were plumbers for a living, and you said, "I'm going to come to your home and beat you until you can't move," and you go there and beat him until he can't move, that's attempted murder and it's cut and dried. The before and after, Pat, is going to be all a, a good attorney. Could they get that thrown out as inadmissible? I
Well,
said all of those things in character to hype a wrestling match.
I want it, man. I want it all. The only thing that I don't want in is evidence that proves the contrary of the defense, which is this was consent. So anything that shows that this was not consent would be bad evidence for you. Everything can be consistent with consent. If he says, "I hate wrestlers, I'm going to show this guy, I'm going to beat him, I'm going to get my receipts," and then afterwards he says, "I have no regrets, I beat him, I'm sorry that he's almost died," because he says, like, "My bad, my bad." But, like, again, isn't that a heel? Isn't that somebody who's selling the show? Like, you don't break character. So I'm fine with that evidence. I embrace that evidence if you're a defense attorney. However, it depends on what the truth is. You can only put on these defenses if it's consistent with what your client says happened. Your job as a defense attorney isn't to make things up. It's to ethically, zealously advocate for your client with the information that they give you. So, you either attack the case on a reasonable doubt, whether they actually proved it, or you prove your own case with the evidence that your client gave you, which they're already doing. Jackson's already saying, obviously they don't have a lawyer because they're just saying this, like, "Hey, they told me I could do this." So it sounds like this is not as cut and dry as we think.
Can the promoter be criminally liable if I gave a guy permission to beat the crap out of one of my wrestlers and he almost died?
That's a good
Now
question.
he knows he's going to be sued civilly. Like we want to like, yeah, they're going to sue for medical costs, blah 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 blah, which I understand and they have a good case. Can the promotion itself be held criminally liable for giving somebody a green light to commit assault and battery slash attempted murder? Is that
In
a
Florida,
possibility?
we have a crime called culpable negligence. They use it a lot, usually for truck drivers who are negligent in an accident and kill somebody, but like gross negligence. Like I'm talking like drinking and driving truck driver that actually, or like the one happening right now where the person's making a U-turn will probably be a
I
culpable
saw that.
negligence.
Yeah, it's bad.
So it's basically like gross negligence. You're going above the average. We don't want to criminalize accidents, okay? Because think about that. We don't want to put people in jail for rear-ending somebody, even if the repercussions are bad, because accidents happen. Do we want a wrestler promoter to be arrested for the actions of a wrestler that goes too far? I think of this as this is almost it was negligent to hire this person. It's almost like hiring a security guard that you know has an anger issue who then kills somebody. They hired a wrestler with no wrestling experience, with MMA experience, who almost beat somebody to death. Like that's negligent. Is it gross negligent? Is it criminally negligent? I don't know if I don't want a promoter held responsible for negligent hiring. That's a pretty high standard,
But
you
what
know?
about if they can prove that the promoter who ran this thing told me hit that guy as hard as you can? If there is a which by the way, Raw, SmackDown, one of the things I want to clarify, this isn't the 1970s in the territories. Vince is not about to have Randy Orton break his nose because he told, some other, AJ Styles to really hit him with a forearm. Now, number one, AJ Styles wouldn't do that. He's a fucking pro. But beyond that is these superstars for the WWE are gold, especially the really, really big ones. You don't want a receipt that has somebody out of action for 2 months. Okay. So that was one thing that in modern wrestling, I never heard somebody go, oh, we're going to have this guy really beat this other guy up because they're
Right.
like, dude, we can't have him getting injured. Like, these are
Don't
resources that we need.
don't they
Right.
perform like a crazy schedule too? Like
Oh, it's
it's
insane. Yeah. They do 4 times, they're basically Friday through Monday. Um,
it's like hurting pie oh my. You can't go after those racehorses.
you can't break the horse. Yeah, the legs of your racehorse. So, but the idea that if you could prove the promoter said hit that guy in the face as hard as you can, does that rise to gross negligence?
Is the other fighter on board? I'm sorry to answer your question with a question, but doesn't your answer change if this poor wrestler who was knocked unconscious consented? Because if the promoter says, listen, we're going to do this for real because we're going to get super big, this is going to go viral. And the guy who got knocked out said, yeah, you can knock me out, but don't take it too far, but you can knock me out. Doesn't that liability, isn't that different than the promoter conspiring with Jackson and this other guy had
Behind the
no
guy's
idea?
back.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was some interesting comments that people were saying like a lot of the wrestlers seem to be standoffish with this veteran who was knocked out. So like we don't know, maybe this was a setup, and that's the thing. I mean, they really got to interview these people and again like it's not as cut and dry as we think. This is confusing. This is like a movie or a magician or what is this? I don't know. So if the promoter set this person up without their consent, that is horrific, and that 100% should be held liable in criminal court. I think that rises to gross criminal negligence. But if all these people are on board and it just went too far, that's it's not the same thing.
Civilly, you're in trouble, but criminally,
Yeah,
yeah.
civilly they have to prove negligence, basically that it's, what they did is I'm trying not to speak legal terms here, but they were responsible for this person's injuries and they should have known better, right? That's the
Yeah.
best way to explain it. And again, there's kind of a consent thing here that wrestlers get hurt. Can wrestlers sue every time they get hurt? When they break their foot? No, but we do want them to be able to sue when, somebody rushes the stands with no security and stabs the guy in the foot. So there's different levels to this.
Last question I have because I find it very, very interesting. Let's circle all the way back to the beginning. You said people could watch this and go, "Oh, it's a wrestling work." Or they could be horrified, like I was horrified, if you
Horrified.
know what you're looking at.
Right.
A jury of civilians, because you'd weed out anybody with combat sports experience or pro wrestling experience, probably as a defense attorney. Or you'd want pro wrestling people, but not MMA people. That would be interesting jury
Right.
selection. But the idea of what you're seeing when you look at this event could change everything. How you interpret what you're seeing could be everything. Because you could be horrified, or you could go, "Oh yeah, it's wrestling. That's fake, right?"
Yeah, that's just really good acting in wrestling.
How much of a risk could you take as a defense attorney
Well,
with
you got
with
to
a jury
remember
seeing this?
You got to remember, some people think wrestling's real, and the Boston Crab is the most deadly submission that could possibly happen. So I want somebody on the jury that has never fought before and has not seen any of these videos and might I don't necessarily want a pro wrestling fan. I think that, I know this sounds terrible, but like our mothers would be great jurors for something like this because they think it's all violent. They think it's all awful. Any of this happening, it doesn't matter if somebody's getting knocked out or Brock Lesnar F5'd. It's all horrific in their eyes, and they don't understand how this went to a second level of an unconscious
Of
person.
violence. Yeah.
You have to remember, in popular culture, people get knocked out all the time in movies and wake up. People don't understand what knocked out means. They think, oh, that's normal. I saw some guy get karate chopped in the neck and got knocked out. So I think the public's stupidity when it comes to real violence works in Jackson's favor.
Appreciate you, man. Where can everybody find you if they need some legal help in South Florida, man?
DefenderDon.com for your accident and criminal needs.
Great stuff. Appreciate you, Pat. I'll see you in training this week. Any other questions, man? I know you're my guy. Appreciate you,
I
buddy.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.